My name's Katie Crowley. I'm Deputy Mayor for Public Works for the City of Madison, for Mayor Soglin, who is coming back early from a conference that he's at, so he will be here later this afternoon. But thank you for joining us today. We're dealing with unprecedented weather events, and city staff have been in some cases working around the clock since the rain started falling on Monday. The governor has declared a state of emergency, and we are certainly treating it as such. We don't need reminders of the dangers of this water, as our thoughts continue to be with the family and friends of Jim Sewell, who lost his life on Monday evening. Our goal here today is to let area residents, visitors, and commuters know what to expect regarding travel in our local streets as lake levels rise, and to help residents and businesses prepare for the water levels as well. I'm joined by numerous city staff, and they're all up and down the hallway, including those from engineering, traffic engineering, police, fire, streets, parks, IT, fleet, building inspection, and water utility, as well as public health. Staff will be able to respond to questions afterwards. We are this week dealing with uncharted waters, so to speak. We have not before ever seen a rain event like we did Monday evening, and we have not ever dealt with rising lake levels like we're experiencing now. City engineering staff and others in the city have, however, planned for and done modeling for such an event, and that work is guiding us in our preparations now. I have City Engineer Rob Phillips here to talk about the levels, what's happening, what's happened, and what we can expect. Rob?
Thank you. I'm Rob Phillips, City Engineer for the City of Madison. The current lake level on Lake Mendota is near the 100-year flood elevation. Lake Monona is at the 100-year flood elevation. As Katie said, these are unprecedented levels. We have not seen this in Madison prior, and we've seen a lot of high water events. What's happening on the Yahara River is one of our areas of concern. The county, Dane County, manages the lakes, and they are doing an excellent job doing so. They have increased the release rate out of the Tenney Dam yesterday, and that increase in release rate was necessary to protect the integrity of the Tenney Dam. Dams have to be protected by monitoring or managing the lake levels. If the Tenney Dam were to fail, we would have a catastrophic event, far worse than what we're experiencing now or even what we expect to experience. So I think that's important for everybody to understand the reasons why the release at Tenney has to be what it is. So we had an increase in the release yesterday. We had a 5-inch rise in the Yahara River at East Main Street overnight. Not normally a big deal, but since the lake levels and the water in the Yahara River was already high, it is having a significant effect. Today, the county, this morning at about 11 a.m., the county increased the rate of release again at the Tenney locks, and that is full open at this point in time. So that part of the dam is full open and releasing all the water that they're able that way. But there is another way for the county to release water, and that's through the locks area, and they intend to do that this afternoon. So more water would be added to the equation this afternoon. So with all of that, we would expect a 3 to 6 inch rise in the level of the river at East Main Street over the course of today and through the night tonight. In addition, we would expect a 3-inch rise in Lake Monona. Currently, we've got Johnson Street closed, as I'm sure all of you are aware. We're seeing flooding in low areas on the Isthmus, on East Washington Avenue, on Livingston Street, and many places throughout the Isthmus. The Isthmus, a lot of that is made ground, so that means it's very low in proximity to the lake elevation. Again, it was filled wetlands, basically, is what much of the lower areas of the Isthmus were. With the as this continues, like we expect, we will have additional lane closures on East Washington Avenue, and the full closure of East Washington Avenue is a real possibility. As the water rises, we get our impacts change. Right now, we're getting a lot of street impacts. We would expect, as the water rises, it's getting very close to impacting structures in the Isthmus. The city is providing sand and sandbags for private individuals to fill and use, and we'll have several locations where sand and sandbags are available. We have a link that we can provide for those locations so people have them. So it might be counterintuitive to see flooding in areas so far from the lake or the river. So it's important to understand that it's all connected by storm sewers. The same storm sewers that are draining these areas are actually letting water into these areas that are meant to be drained by the storm sewers. It's all connected. So the ponding that you're seeing on East Washington Avenue and Livingston Street, although far from the Yahara River and the lakes, is a backwater of the Yahara River. The storm sewers, therefore, are full of water. So what this means when it rains is, instead of the water falling and being collected in inlets and draining into pipes that are empty, it's draining into pipes that are full of water. And what happens is that water has to be forced or pushed out of the pipe by the new water that's entering it. That situation makes street flooding more likely in the event of severe rain. So a particular concern is the forecast coming up, which calls for rain this evening. I believe it's a half to an inch or so overnight. Perhaps not as much as you would expect would cause a problem, but yet it could cause problems. And certainly the forecast for the following week is isolated and thunderstorms, which could produce higher amounts of rain. If we get intense rainfalls, we would expect the water falling on the street to go away very slowly, and we'll expect flooding on-street urban flash flooding. Again, because of the storm sewers are full, it will take less rain to cause the kind of things that we've seen in larger storms previously. Because of this, we would recommend that business owners and businesses and residents, people going to businesses, to avoid parking in low-lying areas of the Isthmus, especially when rain or heavy rain is predicted. So a lot of damage to automobiles could be prevented by just parking on higher ground or getting the vehicle out of there. It's very inconvenient, but it's a lot less inconvenient than damaging your vehicle. These events, the kind of event we had on Monday night is the kind of event that hits quick, and then over the course of hours, or in the case of Monday night, over the course of a day or so, the water went away. That is not the kind of event that we're talking about here, although that could occur with severe rain. But this event will last longer. It will likely last weeks and take some time for the water to go down. If we get a dry period, that would go down quicker, but if we continue to get rain, this event will last longer, and unfortunately, additional rain will cause lake levels and river levels to rise even higher. That's the information that I have. Katie, who's next?
I'll just step in for a second. I'm going to, Rob and Brian will be available for questions, as will other city staff when we all get done. We will try to reiterate again and again, cityofmadison.com/flooding is the website to go to that we are working really diligently to try to keep updated as best we can with maps and additional information, sites for sandbags, et cetera. Brian Smith is with Traffic Engineering, and he's been working with other city staff on road closures and detours, and so he can give you an update on some of those.
Again, I'm Brian Smith with City Traffic Engineering. Some of the existing road closures I can tell you about right now are the East Main at the Yahara River, the 700 block of Mifflin Street between Livingston and Blount, and what's the most problematic at this moment is the Johnson Street by Tenney Park. That one rose faster than we thought last night, which caused us to have to make the traffic control changes to close that section of roadway, which caused us to put in different traffic control for the Johnson and First and First and East Washington intersections. We are expecting, like Rob was saying, for the water to be rising. Many of you have probably seen some of the water that's on East Washington Avenue right now at Livingston, and the detour route on First Street right now that's at Johnson, we're seeing the water creeping up there too. We're expecting that we may have to close the First Street pretty much completely, maybe even tonight or tomorrow morning. If we have to do that, that means we're going to have to detour traffic coming from Packers to detour onto Commercial to north to East Washington. We're also, it could be very probably that we're going to have to close East Washington Avenue, as Rob had discussed, and if we have to do that, we'll have to make additional changes, which would include allowing traffic on East Washington to come inbound, but have to detour onto Dickinson to the Johnson-Gorham intersections, and then we are putting in parking restrictions right now. There's quite a bit of water that's in the parking lanes on East Washington Avenue, so at this moment, if the signs haven't already been up, they are going up to restrict parking all the way from Blair Street to Baldwin Street. We've also begun putting parking restrictions 24 hours a day on the entire length of Williamson Street. Williamson Street is, right now we've lost, we're losing East Washington. We got the problems with the Johnson-Gorham due to the Johnson Street closure. Willie Street's pretty much all we got left right there. We are exploring the possibility of residents to be able to use city parking facilities. We'll probably have more information if something transpires on that on the city's webpage. People should be aware of areas to avoid parking that's susceptible to flooding, as Rob was saying earlier. Make sure that if people see, you see water on the road, don't drive through it. That caused a lot of problems Monday evening. I want to reiterate, if it wasn't already said, that we really want to encourage people to try to drive to and from work outside of what our normal traffic peak periods are. And to every extent possible, we'd like to encourage the businesses to allow their employees to have some type of flex hours to try to avoid those, because the more you can avoid those periods, the better it's going to be for everybody. We also like to encourage everybody to have patience. We are making changes to our traffic signals. We've been making several of them last night and this morning. We have several cameras around the city where we're able to see what the traffic flow is. Many of these intersections are, just have more traffic on them than they can handle. So there's no way that we can make it work as good as we want to, but we're trying to at least share the pain as much as we can. Want to encourage people to obey the traffic control, to when it's red, to stop on red. We've been seeing quite a few vehicles continue to go after the red, and that's just stealing time away from the next motorists that have a green. I think that's about all I have right now. I'll just questions later.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. We are reminding people that they need to give themselves extra time when traveling to the east side of the city. That would be of particular importance if you've got a flight to catch or to meet someone at the Dane County Regional Airport. Allow plenty of additional time. We have also just learned that Dane County is opening a multi-agency resource center for Monday night's rainstorm. It will be at Black Hawk Church for folks on the west side of town, Middleton, Cross Plains, Black Earth, Mazomanie. So that's something that I'm sure we'll get more information about as well. Road closures are not the only thing the city will be facing. Homeowners and businesses will also be facing possible flooding. Unlike Monday evening, we have a warning with this one. We strongly recommend if there are furniture or valuables in lower levels of homes or businesses in the Isthmus area, you move them to a higher level of the building. Damaged property reports are being collected by staff at United Way 211. I've been asked to remind residents to contact 211 for property damage, not 911. Police are inundated with calls, and information is being collected by United Way to share with Dane County Emergency Management as the county and state staff work to compile losses for possible disaster assistance. We stress, though, that disaster assistance will most likely not extend to private property. Residents should also, of course, document their losses for their individual insurance providers. The drinking water in Madison is safe so far. Madison water utility operations have not been affected by flooding. The water is tested at every well daily to ensure its safety. Water is also tested at various points in the distribution system. The city does have one well that could be at risk as waters continue to rise. Madison Water Utility will be sandbagging their municipal well at 101 North Livingston Street and will shut down the facility tomorrow just as a precaution. The utility will rely on other well facilities to supply drinking water to the area. Water utility crews will also be sandbagging the Madison Water Utility Operations Center on South Patterson Street. This facility does not distribute water. It's a hub for main break, maintenance, repair crews, and assistance. Staff with the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District have also been working to accommodate the huge influx of rain. I have additional information from the district I can share here and electronically, and it's my understanding that Michael Muka from the Sewage District is here someplace to take questions afterwards, but they certainly would be available. Madison public health officials are asking that we treat all floodwaters as contaminated. Stay out of flood and sewage waters. Wait until water subsides because there are harmful bacteria and viruses in the water. After water and debris has subsided, proper cleanup is important. Wear rubber gloves and boots. Wear eye protection to prevent contaminating yourself with sewage. Wash your hands thoroughly and wash clothes separately after cleanup of sewage. We have our city building inspector, George Hank, here. He has additional information that will be helpful to home and business owners.
Good afternoon. My name is George Hank. I'm the director of the City of Madison Building Inspection Division. If your home was affected or does become affected, It's critical to try and dry things out as soon as possible. Everything that's wet, typically in your basement, remove it and try and get the water out of there as quickly as possible. You do that to eliminate the chance of mold growth. If you received a substantial amount of water into your basement where it rised to the level above the gas valve on the water heater or the furnace, those appliances should be replaced. Once they are water soaked, they may work for a while, but they could become dangerous, and they really need to be replaced at that point. If the water raised to the level that your electrical service, your breakers or fuses were underwater, they would likely need to be replaced, or they could possibly be repaired. The guts of the panel could be replaced. So these are safety items that really needed to be addressed if they are affected by water, because it could affect you 6-9 months down the line and result in a substantial loss. So I would encourage you to do that. If your if your clothes washer or dryer was again submerged, especially the lower half of it, and especially a gas dryer, those appliances should be replaced. Those are the things that I wanted to bring out. And again, I think I just want to really stress getting the water out as quickly as possible is really important for the long-term health of your property. Once mold gets in there, it's harder to address. So if you can stop it from forming in the first place, that would be very beneficial. I'll be around for questions afterwards.
Thanks, George. The City Streets Division is prepared to promptly remove any flood-damaged items as they're brought to the curb. Place as much as you can in your collection cans, as the Streets Division will also be scouring the flood-impacted areas over the coming weeks with additional large item collection crews to collect items brought out to the terrace. There are additionally drop-off sites at Badger Road and Sycamore. City Parks Department is working to plan ahead. There's a lot of outdoor events planned in the city on the Isthmus area for the next week. They're meeting with event planners this afternoon, and we'll have more information on that as to what's going to be held, et cetera. Mayor Soglin and city staff appreciate your interest, efforts, and collaboration in getting this important information to residents and commuters. I don't want to use too many water analogies, but as you know, this is a very fluid situation. City staff are continuing to update cityofmadison.com/flooding with information as it becomes available. We continue to ask for people's patience. We continue to ask for people to obey the traffic signals, even though it's very frustrating and detours. And we'll reiterate, if people come in and out of the city during off-peak hours, that'll make everything more easier. Anyway, we can now take any questions for staff. We have these gentlemen here. We have the Metropolitan Sewage District. We have police, fire at your service.
How much trouble is the Teddy Box Teddy Dam in? Is that like, how serious is that?
I don't regard that as a serious risk at all at this point. The county is going to manage this in a way that keeps that dam safe. I only pointed that out because I want people to understand why that release of water has to take place.
Do you have any estimates for the number of properties that could be underwater if their lakes reach the 6-inch level?
You're talking about the 3 to 6 inch rise we're anticipating on the Ohio River?
Kind of the worst case end of that.
I do not. I believe that we can tolerate a few inches for most of the properties. When we get up beyond 6 inches of rise, we're going to be very close to flooding a lot of properties.
Let me rephrase that question that you just asked. How has the modeling that you guys had actually been preparing for the coming days with the actual forecast? How have they been verifying, I guess, is kind of what I'm asking.
I'm not sure what model you're referring to.
You guys are saying you're using actual modeling to figure out which, like inundation maps, I should say.
Yes, we've got maps that identify at various water elevations what general area will be affected, and we can provide that information. We'd like to provide that information. Keep in mind, though, that's that's based on elevation data that's obtained through aerial flights. So it's not extremely accurate. It's fairly accurate, but not extremely accurate. So each property is going to be a little different, and you can't strictly rely on those maps to determine if you're going to flood or not going to flood.
As far as the parking in low-level areas, I know on that east side you have a lot of apartment complexes. Do those include those parking garages, underground parking garages as well?
At some point that could, yes. That could be an issue.
Okay.
Underground parking garages have been an issue in other storms throughout the city. I would be concerned about that. I would just be cautious and move them out. Move your vehicle out of those garages. When rain is expected. I want everybody to understand that lake level rises happen very slowly. Storms, that rise happens quickly. It's very flashy. So especially if rain is predicted, we should be cautious where we're parking our vehicles, and we should be concerned about protecting our property.
Can you give us a best case scenario, worst case scenario, knowing what we do about the forecast? What do you hope for and what do you dread?
That's a tough question.
But it'll be a wonderful
Well,
celebration.
yeah. You know, I'm not going to say the worst case scenario, but you know, what we'd hope for is that it doesn't rain, because if it doesn't rain, we can get ahead of this. The lakes will start getting lower, the Ohio River will start lowering. If it continues to rain, or if we get large, intense amounts of rainfall, that is a very serious scenario. It's not uncommon for the lakes to rise 3 times or so the amount of rainfall. So if you got, say, 4 inches of rain, you could eventually, in a few days, see a foot rise in lake level. So I think that is not the absolute worst scenario, but it's certainly not a scenario we would like to see.
And someone mentioned possibly opening up the parking ramps. Would that be free? And you're not doing it yet.
That's something that's being explored.
Okay,
I
okay.
don't have an answer for you on that.
What's the collaboration, since you had to open up the lock more than it was expected, what's the collaboration with the city of Madison, which has the responsibility of that lock, to the communities downstream, Monona, along Wabisa, Kaganza, which are already experiencing their 100-year levels as well?
Actually, the city of Madison isn't responsible for the locks. Dane County is responsible for the dam and locks at Tenney. That would be better directed toward them, but I will say that I believe they're doing a very good job managing that situation.
Did the storm sewers perform as designed during this event? I mean, did they do it? Did they meet
No.
expectations, or they were just overwhelmed by the
Oh,
volume of rain?
we have two different situations here. We have a storm that happened on the west side of Madison where 10 inches fell. That far exceeds any design standard that we have for storm sewers. That is not the issue here in the Isthmus. Here we're talking about flooding related to high lake levels and high river levels, much like you see in like Mazamani, you know, places like that right now.
Is there something you can point to, any of you really? I know you're saying this is historic, this is something that we haven't seen before. If I've lived in Madison a long time, is there some other flooding event you can point to and say, this is going to be worse than 19 whatever or something? Just to give some context.
It's unprecedented. It's just unprecedented. We've had some high water elevations. We were approaching the 100-year flood elevation on Lake Monona in the past, and Mendota as well. But this one's different. We're going to be exceeding the 100-year elevation, and the release rate on the Ohio River is higher than we've seen in the past, or at least at least the effect of what's happening on the Ohio River is more significant. And really what that has to do with is the profile of the river. It's not a flat surface, it's flowing, so it's much higher on the say Johnson Street end of the river than at the Lake Monona end of the river. So there's more profile on the river than there has been in the past. It's an unprecedented event. You cannot go by what you've seen in the past as you're deciding what to do in regards to this event.
When things hopefully settle down, I mean, will the city be looking at ways to update, improve its infrastructure that deals with water drainage and that kind of thing, or is it just
Well,
too soon to kind of?
it's definitely too soon, but again, this is you can't design storm sewers for the event that occurred on the west side of Madison. Nobody could afford to pay for it. The storm sewers would have to be just so huge. So that was just an unprecedented event. Now there are areas in the city that we are definitely addressing. We are working on those areas to with residents to better protect them against the next heavy rain event. We've had 4 very large events on the west side in 3 years, so we have a pretty good idea of what's flooding there and what we have to work on, and we are definitely working on those areas. The issue related to lake levels is a bit tougher. The county is able to control the level of Lake Mendota. There really is not much that can be done to control the level of Lake Monona. They can cut the weeds in the channel to try to get more water through, that kind of thing, but there's just very little that can be done there.
Do you think this has anything to do with all the building on the east side? If that would have impacted, you know?
No. Those you're talking about along the East Washington Avenue corridor,
Yes,
for instance?
all the development down there.
No. Those areas were developed previously.
Okay.
Though they were impervious surfaces previously, so that would not have affected this.
I guess, and I know, because you threw a lot of information, all of you did, useful information. A lot of people watching this, you know, they're not going to sit and watch 20 minutes. If there was just, you know, a sentence or just what is the bulk of what you want people to hear so they understand?
People need to take this very seriously. Again, it's an unprecedented event. When East Washington Avenue closes, travel in Madison, in the Isthmus of Madison, will be very difficult. If East Washington Avenue closes, or even if lane reductions occur, which is very likely, travel in Madison is going to be very difficult. And people should try to understand the level of the water relative to their business or home, and take action to protect those businesses if necessary, or homes if necessary.
I guess one of the benefits now is we kind of know what's coming versus before. So people should understand, unlike what happened on Monday, that you have an opportunity to move your things this time.
Lake levels rise relatively slow, and river levels rise relatively slow. Again, a storm, and storms are predicted next week, those are flashy, and those would require some planning. You're not going to be able to react to those during the event, so that's going to require taking action before the event.
So in the event of those flash storms that could be pretty intense, I mean, are we talking about, you know, I mean, should people be worried about like leaving and like, you know, getting off of the Isthmus? I mean, is that the kind of danger level that we're at?
At least take a look at, is there a way you can protect, say, a lower window to a basement, or is it possible to protect a first floor, that kind of thing. People should be looking at or considering those kinds of actions. I'm sorry.
Oh, just in the event that there, you know, let's say there are a bunch of like
right.
heavy rainstorms in a short amount of time, and it is, you know, pretty rough. You know, should people be worried about, you know, trying to leave for their own safety, getting off of the Isthmus in case travel is extremely compromised, or?
Well, we're not saying that at this moment. We're not saying it at this moment. But certainly, I would be careful where you park your car.
So how far up the isthmus are we talking? If I'm passing First Street, if I'm at East High, am I safe? If I'm at East Town?
We'll put some maps up that give that information. Nowhere near East Town. We're not talking about that.
I think the worst of that looked like it was, if the worst comes to fruition, it would be east of Blair out to just a little west of Dickinson is where the worst of it would be. And I should have said earlier when we were talking about the possibility of closing East Washington that the first things that we'll do is it'll be the side lanes that will flood first. So we'll close off those and then go to 2 lanes and then we'll close off another lane and go to 1 lane. But it's very possible that it's going to be a hard closure of East Washington, which is something I have never seen in our files has ever happened due to a water event.
I'm just curious, this has been consuming your work life. Anyone care to share any personal anecdotes? Did you have any cars lost or flooded basements or anything?
Not
You planned ahead, I guess, or we're lucky.
Or live on the top of the hill.
Climate change tells us that we're going to be seeing more heavy rain events more intensely, more frequently. You mentioned the Isthmus is a very low-lying area. What are big picture projects that the city has been working on in sort of long-term preparation? I know that this doesn't specifically talk about right here and now because there are imminent threats, but are there any big picture projects that the city's working on?
Oh, there are some. At Elver Park, Park Edge, Park Ridge neighborhood, we're working on a project over there. We've been working for some number of years on University Avenue. It's not complete yet, but we're putting a large storm box in there not to solve that problem, but to help the problem, reduce the flooding in that area. So we've got some, and I'm sure we'll have more in the future. And then there's a lot of little ones. There's a lot of small projects scattered about that are not millions of dollars like the project on University Avenue, but will do good for lesser numbers of people.
When you talked about the storm sewers still being basically full or charged, I'm assuming you've got backflow, something, I mean, is this just water that has nowhere to go, or are you getting pressure as the lakes rise, is it coming back up through?
It's coming back up through. There's no backflow prevention valves or that in storm sewers.
Okay.
It's a connection to the,
So
basically.
if you're a low-lying area, even though you're far away from the lake.
That is precisely correct. Yep.
I would say if you're in one of those areas, you could go and look to the closest storm sewer inlet. And if you look down and the water level is only 6 inches below the street, it's probably going to go up.
Any other questions? We have city staff from almost every department here, if anybody has any specific questions for anybody else.
I guess, are there any other facilities, I mean, you mentioned the one well, any other municipal facilities that, precautions are being taken to protect or that kind of thing?
I think we're sandbagging at a number of them, aren't we, Ron? Or we're prepared to?
Yeah, I don't have a complete list, but our staff is definitely working on those and taking them in a priority order.
And Parks has sandbagged.
Tenny.
The Tenny shelter, yep.
Boathouses.
Yeah.
Yep.
Will there be other sandbagging like in Yahara Place Park, which is already at the point where there are no riprap showing?
I don't know. I don't know specifically about that location.
We have Lisa here. Lisa
It's a
can.
6-block long park, and the
Is there
Yahara
sandbagging
River
at
is
Yahara
over there,
Place
so
Park?
the Yahara River is coming up and the lake level is high too.
Not at this point, there isn't sandbagging at Yahara Place Park. So far, we haven't planned on it thus far, but that doesn't mean that we won't consider it. At this point, our priorities have been to protect infrastructure and to make sure that people within the parks are safe. So we have not discussed sandbagging at Yahara Place Park yet.
Or the Yahara River?
Or the Yahara River.
Since you're with Parks, what is the damage to Tenny Park? What are we looking at?
At this point, it's too early to tell. Much of the park is underwater. As of yesterday, I saw people up to their knees in water
in what should have been 20 feet off of the shoreline. So yesterday it was serious flooding. I haven't been there myself. My staff have been there today, but it's a very serious situation. So we haven't assessed damages there yet. At this point, what we're seeing is flooded landscape. We know that some of our electrical has been exposed to water. For instance, our hockey rink pump has been exposed to water. That doesn't have power to it yet or now, so we don't anticipate that that's going to be damaged. But at this point, it's too early to tell. We've sandbagged around the shelter, so hopefully we will be reducing any threat of damage to the inside, and we've taken protective measures there.
Anyone else? Thank you. cityofmadison.com/flooding.